Okay, hello everyone, it's me, Vodius Devious here, and today I'm gonna do something that I probably haven't done. Well, I haven't done this ever, but I'm covering an iceberg, and this one is over my friend group specifically. Our friend group is called the Gangplank, and it's full of a bunch of man-baby idiots with no sense of maturity that babble on about the stupidest shit one could possibly conjure. Now, to get things started, let's talk about the tip of the iceberg. The image used in the tip is merely the first screenshot from the Lurberg SMP. And here we go. First up, Lurberg SMP. The Lurberg SMP was a survival multiplayer modded server that was named after the town that it was living in. Or, like, the main town that, like, basically started the whole thing. The Lurberg SMP has lived throughout basically forever and still has gone through like a ton of changes. Next is Jackbox Champed Up. Jackbox Champed Up is just self-explanatory. It's something that the Gangplank does a lot. He would get in VC, and one of us would be like, "Oh, hey, let's play Jackbox." And it usually it's the start of a lot of inside jokes like Zombie, the Vodlings, and so and so. Lurberg. Lurberg is the main town of the Lurberg SMP that was named after, me, because at one point in VC I was reciting a quote from Jay Schlatt in which he said Lurberg after showing off a piece of IKEA furniture. Crinson Lils. Crinson Lils used to be a couple way back when, and they had made the town known as Pussy Island. I'm not joking, that's an actual thing. Trampolining. We have a member of the Gangplank who is known for making the infamous gif of a mushroom girl on Roblox, quote unquote, trampolining. It was made to look cropped, and it's become an inside joke to this day because of how funny it is. Pussy Island. Pussy Island was a faction made by Crimson Lils. They wanted to keep it private, but one way or another, me and Steamy found our way to Pussy Island, and it just went downhill from there. It was a faction made by Crimson Lils, and there's a bunch of hearts scattered all over the ground. There's a big church, and there's three different quote unquote pets that they have: Alberto the kangaroo priest, Harold the elephant, and Rowan the goblin. Votus founder. Because I had originally made the server way back when, it is assumed that I am the founder of the Gangplank, even though, I mean, most of us are just equals and we don't really see anyone as like the main, it's kind of like an anarchy democracy type thing. It's complicated. Gehenna. Gehenna was a faction made by me in order to revive an old faction called Pyromania. It was called Pyrocataclysm, and the whole idea of it would it being like hell on earth in the center of a volcano island. It is still alive to this day. Moving on to layer 2, tip of the iceberg. The image that I chose for this was Rowan, because though he was somewhat obscure, he was very memorable. And it is quite his history with the Lurberg SMP is quite notable, as he was one of the most invincible beings on the SMP. Godborn plus Puppeteer. Godborn and Puppeteer are two origins in the Lurberg SMP, in which they are both banned for only one person to use. I currently hold the role of the Puppeteer. Fern is a Godborn. Puppeteer essentially makes it so that whenever you hit someone or someone hits you and you have thorns, they're not safe no matter how far they run away from you, as you can give them any effect you want to at a distance. Gehenna Rises. Gehenna Rises was propaganda made by me in order to or in order to persuade people into joining Gehenna Island, my faction. Gehenna Rises is also a sort of a homage to Pyromania, since it had fallen long ago. Roxy and Crince. Roxy and Crince are somewhat of a dynamic duo. Not as much as Crince and I are, not because I'm jealous, but they're a strange duo. At one point, they were suspected to be a couple, but of course they aren't. I don't think. I'm not too sure. And the two have a pretty good chemistry together. Felvin Giovanni. Felvin Giovanni was an OC made by Krintz after a fatal incident when a catboy priest had recited the phrase "Fortnite balls, sussy balls," but that's for later. It was a very well made OC that came from an inside joke. Identity V. Identity V is a mobile game made by NetEase with a lot of Chinese censorship, but it's a better form of Dead by Daylight. It is a game that a lot of people in the Gangplank play a lot and grind on. By the way, the new Robbie skin looks sick as fuck. Madverse City. Madverse City is a game in Jackbox in which you basically must come up with a rhyme that the game generates for you, and you must basically roast your friend out of sheer spite, or just out of sheer fun, I would say. It's a game we play a lot, and a lot of very memorable verses come from it. The best of the game, I'd say, are me, Shiro, and Wilbur. Monster Seeking Monster. This is another Jackbox game in which you literally must try to flirt with someone in order to win. And you have these special abilities depending on what monster you are, and you can use them to your advantage so you can win and get the most hearts. This usually ends up in the stupidest conversations between us, especially when the safe word is quote unquote Toledo. Mushroom Mia. Mia Lee, in the beginning of the Lurberg SMP, was originally a size shifter, which was depicted as a mushroom. She could grow and shrink in size as seen in this screenshot, the big white standing figure. And she would have different abilities depending on how big she was and how small she was. Rest in peace, Rawan. Rawan was a goblin owned by Krintz at the time, and he had very, very notably good trades. Essentially, he was the only Rawan. He was the only thing in the Lurberg SMP that never truly died. Some game-breaking bugs and glitches occurred that should have killed Rawan, but at the same time, he stayed alive when the rest of the cohorts in Pussy Island had perished. Rawan later did die to Fern the Godborn in a crossfire between him and Krintz. It's never been the same ever since that happened, and the two have begun a rivalry because of this. See you soon, Rawan. Godspeed. Stop giving me NFTs! Okay, anyways. Moving on to the next layer. The water zone, or whatever that. I'm just gonna call the rest of this the deep end because, I mean, hey, this, all water. Anyways, here we go. The image is Glommer, a character from Don't Starve Together, and it was a screenshot taken by Mia. Glommer is a little friendly, cute little shit, weird ass looking thing, and I have no idea what its true purpose is in the world. I just know that it is a Glommer, and it must be respected. Joe Biden and Job Job. Why the hell did I make this? Joe Biden and Job Job, essentially in the Jackbox game Job Job, where you must use other people's words in order to make a resume, there was a prompt that had to do with Joe Biden and Coolsville blowing up, which I will get to later in the next layer. And because of that, Joe Biden had become a running theme in Job Job later on, and it's still going, and I don't understand it. Pyromania. Long before the Lurberg SMP was a survival multiplayer server, vanilla, called Funny Brawl. In Funny Brawl, there were 3 outstanding factions. Others have either been griefed or had never lived to see the light of day. Coolsville, Pyromania, and Swagfin Island. Pyromania was my faction, the one that resided in the Nether, an outstanding black stone castle that was never finished to this day. Pyromania still lives on through the spirit of Gehenna Island in the Lurberg SMP. And it was then griefed by both me, the creator, and Hex in order to set the Funny Brawl SMP free from its endless chain of disaster. Mia's noises. Every once in a while, Mia will make a strange noise in VC that's kind of just like it doesn't really make any sense. I'll be doing something in VC, right? Like I'll be playing Hunter Ranked, and the next second I can just hear Mia going. I still don't understand why she does it to this day, and she has her own language where she can just make up words like glubby, zombie, glumbus, goobert, and so and so. She's a Mia. Next, Raccoon Boy. Raccoon Boy was an origin in the original Origin SMP. It was modded that you were a raccoon, and it is notable to this day because it kind of gave me the idea that I am a raccoon. Kind of. I'll get to this later. Raccoon Boy, we were going to add it to the Lurberg SMP until we realized that it wasn't gonna work with Aternos. We needed another hosting service, so Raccoon Boy unfortunately did not see the light of day. It would have been a great origin. Maxwell Gaming. Moving on, Coolsville. Coolsville was one of the three outstanding factions in the Funny Brawl server, ruled by Hexpatio, who was recently banned for unknown reasons. I still don't know why I did. It's complicated. Whatever. Coolsville was a faction ruled by Hex that had lived the longest. Pyromania was gaining power over Coolsville, and the leader had grown weary of what was soon to come. Zombie is a little creature that Mia made in Jackbox under the. It was. It was under. Zombie was an underdog in Champed Up, and it was under the prompt of self-care. It is a little white, rounded box creature with a purple bow tie and a purple top hat. I don't understand. It's cute, but moving on. Hounder. Hounder was an inside joke made and champed up by Shiro the Shroom, the person who was infamously known for trampolining. Hounder, it started off as a quote unquote bad joke that Shiro made. Where the title was "Hounder Don't Starvation," and the drawing was a poorly drawn hound from Don't Starve Together. It then became an inside joke, so we began to call the game Don't Starve Together, Don't Starvation. Moving on, the deep end, with an image of Evitz, my OC, with a ton of epic face. You'll understand it later. First on the line, TMATG. TMATG, or The Monster and the Girl, is a webcomic that is made by Pastel. I'm a co-writer of the webcomic, and because she is in the Gangplank, it fits in here, and it's very well made. Whenever it's finished, I guarantee I really hope you'll check it out because it has a lot going for it. We haven't finished it yet, but it's in the makings. It has three main characters: Daisy, the little blind girl; Willard, the tall gray mutant; and Dorcas, meow. Harsh testing. Harsh testing, or Harsh, was a member of the Gangplank that was later banned for being a general nuisance. While we do support being annoying in every shape and form, Harsh was a bit too much and exceeded that by being your average 13-year-old band kid with horrible humor. Aureus. Aureus is an RPG that is being made by me, Votus, and with very dark themes, and the main character being a goth lady named Roxy, named after my friend, Roxy. It has a lot going for it currently, and holds the little. It. Yeah. This is where things start to get a little bit serious. Fern versus Crince. Fern versus Crince first began after Fern had slaughtered Rowan in front of Crince. That was the day that Crince sort of grew a rivalry with Fern, and the two started lashing at each other with their weapons. It ended soon after, but Crince still holds a grudge in their heart. Fern versus Votus. Fern versus Votus was, unlike Fern versus Krintz, was, by the way, I'm Votus, was, it was debated ever since the start of the Lurberg SMP. Because we are both band origins that have the ability to counter each other, it always rose the question, who would win in a fight, me or Fern? This question still has yet to be answered, and who knows? Maybe it will be soon. And the final one for this category is the Coolsville Disaster. This started everything for the Gangplank. Hexbash Show, at the time, was a server known and nuisance, and we were planning on getting our vengeance on him through retaliation. Coolsville, his faction, was ruled by himself and himself only. He had no other residents or members residing within Coolsville, and it was his time to face his fears. Redemption. Me, Steamy, Mia, and many others had banded together to scatter blocks all around Coolsville, while I, Votus, planted a nuke under one block that he would in turn break in order to set off the nuke and destroy his own faction. But it didn't go to plan. Hex had logged in the middle of the operation. While there were blocks scattered about, he logged in the middle of it, as someone had told him about it, when he wasn't supposed to join yet. Hexbasho then joined and told us to clean it up, not knowing about the nuke. So we started to break every block except for the one in the main hall. I told Hex to do that, but he refused, and went through the vents to clean up there. And what I didn't know was that the nuke was exposed through the ventilation system. So Hex found it, and so I had to set off the nuke myself. And then I did it again because he rolled back the server, and that just proved that it would be in an endless loop and there was nothing he could do to save Coolsville. Lurberg ships. Here we are in the, I'll call this the uber deep end, with the image here being the original Lurberg town after the dreaded Halloween event. The Halloween festival was a ruse made by us in order to get back at Hex for things that he did not compensate for in the first place. It too had a failed plan, but I'll get to that later. Lurberg ships. It was a point made by a few of us that if Lurberg had a community much like the Dream SMP, who would be shipped with each other and why? Because everyone has to have this conversation inevitably, and there's nothing you can do to escape from it. Yes, I'm being serious. We came to the conclusion that it would be Proto and I, Steamy and Hex, don't ask, Mia and Vito probably, and Nico and Krintz, or Lils and Krintz, or Roxy and Krintz, even though Roxy isn't in the server. VOD's Manor Hunt. I own a mansion in Minecraft, in the Lurberg SMP, that no one can find yet, and I was planning on doing a hunt for it, and it is yet to come. This is very vague, and the reward is absolutely fucking massive. With free access to Gehenna housing, or the Mausoleum housing, a ton of Eternium blocks from what I remember, Orbs of Origin, Netherite, and so on and so on. TNT minecarts. TNT minecarts were used in both catastrophes, one of which I'll get to later, and then became a sort of inside joke that I'm kind of a maniac for destruction, and that TNT minecarts, or just TNT in general, is my main method of destruction. Yes, I did get therapeutic help. No, it did not work. Bombing plans. It was our plan to bomb Lurberg ever since it became a ghost town. We would give Hex control of Lurberg in order to give him something that he had loved, and then we would take it away from him as fast as he got it. Lurberg Disaster. October 30th, 2021. We logged on to the Lurberg SMP in order to begin the spooky Halloween festival. It had not, it never began, unfortunately. We would carry on the event like it would, like any other normal friend group would, and only in the end would the real fireworks show begin. What would happen was that I would leave the stage, crawl down a fountain of blood, and then enter the control room with a sign that says light your fuse, prove your worth. But before the event even started, Hex had found it, and I had to drag him out of there with my puppeteer ability where I can teleport people to a voodoo doll whenever I feel like it. Hex had the curse at the time. I had dragged him out of there, and I had went in there myself because I knew it was too late, and then I lit the fuse, and I proved my worth. Hex was then gone. Moving on to the shallow, deep iceberg. With the image here being the old crossover episode server. The crossover episode. The crossover episode was the original predecessor to the Gangplank, in which it was just one group DM and another talking with each other. This caused both of the group DMs to basically die out because of the rise of the crossover episode. It was both group DMs talking to each other because of the 10-person group DM limit. This server once died once the Gangplank was basically created because we had no use for it anymore. Evets. Evets is an OC of mine that the Gangplank takes a very large liking to. Evets is a 20-sided dice with a slit eye replacing every number. It is known as a dream demon, something that can take form in your dream and manipulate his way out of the mind space and into the real world to cause destruction. The Gangplank finds him a silly little goose, mainly because of his memeable design and so forth. The joke art was made by Vito, which was basically propaganda. It was calling Evans cooler because he was 3D and had a cooler top hat, whereas Bill was 2D and had a boo boo lamey no top hat, unlike Evans. Make an Evet. Krince in the events channel was desperate for something new in the Gangplank, so he mistyped something while trying to say, make an event! Instead of that, he said, make an Evet! Please make an Evet! So, I guess Steamy and Mia worked up and made two different versions of my OC, Evets, into a 6-sided dice and a 4-sided dice, both being goofier looking than Evets. And it was kind of funny, to be honest. It became an inside joke after that, but an obscure one at that. Necromancer Votus. Here's where things start to get a bit vague. There was a beta version of Lurberg, I would say, where the SMP hadn't actually gotten anywhere, and I was planning on being a necromancer until I realized how useless the ability was. This was sort of in between the age of the crossover episode and the Gangplank, as we had tried to find a new way of an origin SMP instead of going elsewhere. This, of course, was short-lived as I had become a puppeteer, the master of puppets. Hex and Vito. They were married. I will get to this later on. This is one of the most important events for the Gangplank, and I will surely cover it later. The original group DMs. There were two original group DMs, one dubbed Mega Cum Blast, which had me, Vito, Nikoban, Krince, and a few others, including Retro, and at a time, Siberian, who had become a well-known, hated figure of the Gangplank. The two original group DMs had banded together to make the crossover episode, which is why they're so important in the creation of the Gangplank. Origin SMP. The Origin SMP was the thing that completely started the Gangplank. It was an SMP that the crossover episode had basically banded together in, just just to test the waters out in a public server full of well-minded people at the time, but I wouldn't really call them well-minded. It was a rather strange SMP with questionable rules and weird plugins, but we made the most out of it. I was a raccoon boy at the time, which gave me the whole raccoon Votus type thing going on, which you can see in this category. I don't actually think I covered that one, but personally, I don't give a shit, I just did. This is very important in terms of things, because this is what started most of the friend group for us. The Dark Age. The Dark Age in the Gangplank had just now finished. It went through January to February, and began once Vito was gone. He's now back. The Dark Age is a sequence of events where most of the Gangplank was gloomy and rather, I wouldn't say inactive or dead, but unwilling. Many people were, I guess, in a dark part of their lives, and only now has it been crawling out, and I doubt it's gonna die anytime soon. And speaking of the Dark Age, most of it went down, and I don't care! Oh my god! Dude, literally do not install Brave. Like, it is the most safe browser add-on, but like, but not browser add-on, but it is the most safe browser, but oh my god, the amount of times it, like, encourages you to buy NFTs and stuff, Jesus. Anyways, that brings me on to the server icon, the drama channel in the not safe for zombie category in the Gangplank. The drama channel is where most of the Dark Age took place, as it was very full of drama, and only now is it ending. People have been forgiven, and I do not forgive myself for doing the things that I did. Fortnite balls, sussy balls. That is a quote that will go down in history for the server. I'm not fucking joking. This is where the Origin SMP marriage trilogy begins, and I will drag this one and this one into one as a whole, and I will make it the category the Origin SMP marriage. Hexbasho and Vito were getting married because of a stupid little inside joke that we decided to make, where he bought a wedding ring from where they bought a wedding, but bought a wedding ring from each other. It ended out in basically us just telling them to get married on the Minecraft server, which was kind of funny, and we called it the furry marriage because of, it was an Origin SMP where basically all furries, because Vito was a goatland at the time, a goat Vito. It was a very powerful origin in which one would basically act like a goat. You could only eat meat or modded foods, but you were very fast, you could charge and jump very high, and you could do more damage with your fists. And Hex was a plant or a Gaian. Gaians could only stay out in the sun in order to achieve food, and then they would be fully nourished. You could only be in very high light sources, and it was recommended that you didn't have a roof on your house because of this. It was a sort of complicated origin that Hex had to work around, but he made it work in the end. And these two were to get married in the Origin SMP. We had built the marriage, and at the time of the marriage, we were playing a song called "Final Hours with Bells" from Majora's Mask. Because, I mean, let's be real here, there was a really silly thing to do in general, so why not add a little bit of an ominous aura to it? And this is when it would begin. Hex would be the quote-unquote bride, because it's funny calling him a woman, and Vito would become the gride because they're bi gender. It's funny because it's groom and bride make. I'm not funny. These two would proceed to get marriage. Get marriage. You get the fucking point. Prince would be the quote-unquote catboy priest, which started the whole Felvin Giovanni trend, because it came from an inside joke and a skin that they had. I would be the, and I shit you not, the Duke of Divorce. I say while sipping from my bottle of Ozarka water. That's what it's called, right? Yeah, it's Ozarka. I would be the Duke of Divorce because I would instantly divorce them after the marriage, just so they didn't have to suffer through being married, even though it's a fucking Minecraft server. Except I wouldn't actually do this, and I'd just use that as a cover-up because I would peg them together as an excuse to kill people in an ancient ritual during the wedding by splashing them with harming and poison. That is actually what would happen. And here's the thing. In the rules of the Origin SMP, you cannot unconsensually kill anyone randomly in the server. But here's the thing, I had a trick up my sleeve. In the wedding book, I proclaimed that by going to this wedding you are consenting to die or to be killed. So, of course, I had an easy cover up. And that's where things went down. The wedding was just about to begin, but then Krint said something in chat. Fortnite balls, sussy balls. Lo and behold, a mod in the server, xed, which is what this username is, stepped into the business and said, "Hey, Krintz, could you please not say that? It makes people uncomfortable because it is not safe for work." And me, and literally everyone else in the Origin SMP, thought that was complete and utter bullshit, so he started to retaliate. Krintz then asked Xed if they were a top because they were a furry and they didn't have anything better to do with their life other than harass little shits in a Minecraft server because, well, literally, they have nothing better to do, and I still find it funny. And Krintz asks Xed if they were a top, and Krintz just began to harass Xed until they could not take it anymore and they straight up banned Krintz. This meant a lot to us because then we began to retaliate. We would just non-stop PvP each other in panic. We contacted other mods to let people know how Xed was being. None of them cared, even though they really should have. Like, literally everyone in the server but the mods cared, which was kind of funny, to be honest. And by then, Xed was basically baiting everyone in order to get them out of here. They put, like, basically banned loot on Bedrock and told people to step on it in order to get it. And they called it a purge, even though I was the one who had the last laugh. They began unfairly banning people from the server, and because of this we bonded our hatred together, and instead of it being a funny marriage server for the marriage specifically, I changed it and repurposed it to be the Gangplank, a friend group specifically for the dumbest, most shittiest people on the planet. The words Fortnite balls, sussy balls will go down in history to lead all of these different things to just happen all at once, and I'm still surprised that I'm friends with these great people today. Great people except for... I'm not gonna finish that sentence. Steamy's the token straight. Love you, fuck you, bye.